The environment has played a huge role in determining the history of the world. It has made or broken entire races. The first civilizations developed in the fertile river valleys located around the world. These include the Fertile Crescent, the Nile Delta, and the Indus River Valley. These areas provide a rich land for the practice of agriculture and early irrigation, both of which led to the domestication of crops. Climate also plays a huge role. In order to grow, the climate has to be temperate and provide some rain. Also, because people cannot survive in certain types of climate zones, this determines the places around the world that are inhabited by humans at this point in history. The environment drastically affects the population living in an area. If an element of the environment changes, the people living there will have to adjust or will inevitably die out. The appearance, behaviors, and technology of a population may also be altered and adjusted in order to counteract the problems they face from the environment. The earliest time period referred to by historians is the Stone Age, in which most of the population was made up of hunters and gatherers. During the Neolithic Revolution, the domestication of plants led to a food surplus and therefore the specialization of labor. The Bronze Age is entered when tools become more advanced as people learn how to blend copper and tin. This leads the way to the Iron Age when people discover how to get their fires hot enough to melt iron, which is a much stronger metal than bronze. In both the Bronze and Iron Ages, owning these precious metals signified wealth. The surplus of food, domesticated agriculture, and irrigation led to government, social stratification, and the use of kings. Roads improved, allowing for better communication and the diffusion of cultures. The surplus of food and an increase in population led to the spread of cities and a booming middle class. The term civilization is hard to define, but is most often considered to be a complex society. Anyone who tries to define a civilization is automatically biased by the culture they live in. We think of civilization of being like ourselves, and anyone who is not like us as being barbaric. The 5 traits characterizing a civilization are advanced cities, advanced technology, skilled workers, complex institutions, and a system of writing or record keeping. They can also include language, urban areas, specialization, stratification, buildings, records, trade, and major scientific and artistic advances. The most common source of change to a land and its people is the connection and diffusion of cultures with others. With cultural diffusion, many people can get together and combine their ideas to come up with the best solution. You get the advantage of different experiences and ideas, what worked and what didn't, but this approach could also yield stagnant results in the area of technology. Most often, foraging societies consisted of small groups entirely dependent on nature. The women gathered nuts and berries while the men hunted for game. These people were the most susceptible to disease, natural disaster, climate change, etc. When supply of animals or plants would run low, they were forced to move, keeping these people from permanently settling down. They also had few personal belongings, only those they could carry on their back. Due to their constant travel, these nomads had the most diverse diet around. Pastoral societies were those who domesticated and relied primarily upon herds of animals for survival. These groups were most often found in mountainous, dry regions with little farming capabilities. These nomads were constantly moving to find adequate water and grazing land for their animals. Often patriarchal, a man's status was determined by size of their herd. Extended families were very important. These people were the first to cultivate plants, the father to modern agriculture. Agricultural societies consisted of small, independent communities whose members practiced an early cultivation of plants. These settled communities allowed for development of culture and featured a combined sense of unity among its citizens. Because people were tied to their land, these early farmers began to see it in terms of ownership. As agriculture developed, people were able to better improve upon technology. The two essentially go hand in hand. With agriculture, people could control the growth of plants and allowed for better ways to maintain, harvest, and protect the agriculture. As larger civilizations arose, the focus of technology shifted from agriculture to improving everyday life, especially in weaponry. Developments in metallurgy were by far the most important. When people settled down for agriculture, they began to change the layout of the land. Roads were built to link villages, resources were removed from the earth, animals were being put to work helping with agriculture, land was cleared for farming, and water was diverted to be used in the fields. The earliest time period recognized by historians is the Stone Age. This material was originally used by nomads for simple tools, later applied to monuments and larger buildings. Bronze, a combination of tin and copper, was a much more durable and easy manipulated metal. The Bronze Age saw greatly improved tools and weapons, also a big sign of the formation of a civilization. From the Bronze Age, we see a transition to the Iron Age. This metal was very expensive and, as such, reserved for trade and religious purposes. Iron was best used for tools and weaponry, and smelting allowed for easy shaping. Even though it is by far the greater of the two materials, many still favored bronze during this point in history. Mesopotamia arose in the valley of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and as such is known as the land between two rivers. The cultural achievements of Mesopotamia represented independent innovations. These were later passed on to other river civilizations in Egypt and the Indus Valley. By 4000 BCE, Mesopotamians were already using bronze and copper, had invented the wheel, and had developed irrigation canals in order to farm. They developed the first example of writing called cuneiform. It involved pictures pressed into clay using a wedge-shaped stylus. They expressed the glory of their civilization and of the many gods of nature by building towers called ziggurats. The patriarchal social structure was headed by rulers and an elite class who controlled the land, which was farmed by slaves. Despite early restrictions, Mesopotamian women had more rights than many of the other earlier civilizations. The Babylonian king Hammurabi devised the first written code of law. It was known as the Code of Hammurabi and was based on the theory of an eye for an eye. Egypt began along the fertile silt of the Nile River like most early civilizations. The pharaoh or king of Egypt had considerable power. The people of Egypt believed that he was the reincarnation of the sun god, Ra. Their strong belief in an afterlife led to the common practice of mummification, to both the slaves and the pharaohs. The Egyptians did not acquire bronze and iron tools and weapons until long after they had reached Mesopotamia. Some historians believe that Egyptian picture writing, or hieroglyphics, was developed from trade contacts with Mesopotamia. They followed a 365-day calendar and also studied medicine, math, and astronomy. Egypt also consisted of social classes, but the poor could enter government services and rise in social status. The Egyptian families were patriarchal, but women did have some privileges. The Nile, unlike the Tigris and Euphrates, overflowed annually and was predictable. Throughout most of its early history, the surrounding deserts protected Egypt from contact with invading people, permitting its civilization to develop its own unique characteristics. By 2500 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization emerged along the Indus River in present-day Pakistan. Like the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Indus River was noted for its violent and unpredictable flooding. Among the urban centers that arose along this river were Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Streets in both cities were laid out in a precise grid, and the houses had running water and sewage systems. Much of what historians know about the Indus Valley Civilization comes from archaeological discoveries because Harappan writing has yet to be translated.